The women look up like, oh my God, he's Danny's boy.
That might be a signal that you need to take more ownership over your own development. The Shintaro Higashi Show is sponsored by Judo TV, your premier destination for live and on-demand judo coverage. Never miss a throw. Higashi brand. Train hard, live strong, wear Higashi brand. Hakuin AI. Hakuin AI helps you measure, predict, and solve customer churn. Visit Hakuin AI and start your free churn audit today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Shintaro Higashi Show with Dave. We're going to talk about something very interesting today. What's the difference between a coach and an instructor?
I think this is something that can be very frustrating for people without them realizing why it's frustrating.
Yes.
And some people think it's obvious, and other people are like, what's the difference? I don't know what the difference is.
So can you give me an example of like mistakenly, so I feel like this guy's my coach, but he's an instructor and an instructor and a coach, like where that, like a personal anecdote from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, someone can be an awesome instructor. So they're very good at communicating a particular technique, a particular method, even like particular concept, right? They're great in front of the class.
Yeah.
They know a lot of details. They're great with that. But when it comes to tailoring something to the one guy, the one student, or adjusting something for a particular student, or giving feedback on like on a role, let's say, sometimes if they're just not there for it.
Yeah.
Right. Like the coaching is not there, and it can be very, I think, frustrating for the student because they're like, well, I'm doing everything in class, like I understand, right? How do I cognitively understand the technique that they're showing me, right? But there's this gap between knowing the technique and doing the technique.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the coaching helps you bridge the gap.
I completely agree with you. And I think a lot of the times you play high school sports, right? And then you're after school playing football or something, and the coach is there, but he's also instructing you and teaching some of these skills. Like, you walk onto the football team in Scarsdale, we're really not known for our football pro. A lot of these kids didn't grow up playing football. They're not, it's not like right? We're not in the cornfields of Texas, like kind of living and breathing this stuff. So the coach has like this instructor coach kind of a hybrid thing, right? We're in a very like.
I'm laughing because I know exactly what.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
So then you go to a jiu-jitsu school and you see this guy, the instructor or the professor or the sensei teaching this stuff. And now all of a sudden you treat that person like a coach, like, hey, I'm having problems with this and problems with that. But, at the end of the day, right, the expectations are very, very different, right? Because a lot of these instructors are also coaches. They'll coach people in the room, and it has to have sort of this personalized element. And there's a lot more to be demanded, with the label of coach, I feel like. And then when your expectation is going like, this guy's my instructor and coach, and then the teacher, like myself a little bit, I'm an instructor, I'm your teacher, I'm an educator first and foremost. Coach, sometimes. You have to be hand selected to be in my coaching program almost, you know what I mean? And majority of the times, like, I really can't fulfill my duties as your coach because I have to take my kid to the pool this weekend. She has a skating thing. She has a ballet recital this Saturday. Something this weekend. Judo tournament. Hey, can you come coach me on this thing? No, man, I'm going to my kid's ballet recital. I'm not going to choose that over, right? But if you're
My
a
daughter,
coach,
who I love so much.
yeah, and if you're a full-blown coach and that's your job and that's your responsibility, you made it clear I'm your instructor and coach, that's your obligation, But I'm very, very distinguishing of like, hey, man, So that's kind of the difference in my eyes. There's got to be something like this in music too, right? Because, you have a very strong background in playing the skin flute, and you must have had many coaches. I got to slip that in there.
Classy. Always classy, Shintaro.
But,
I mean, yes and no. I think because you're not, you're fighting your instrument. Um, you're fighting your instrument and not another person, right? So it is a little bit different because it is like almost a purely technical exercise. Like you're not strategizing against your violin or your oboe, right? But there is still a gap. Like your teacher, I would say, very much is an instructor. I would say that the amount, like if you were percentage wise, like every teacher, music teacher is probably like 80%, 90% instructor, but you do need coaching when you're trying to, prepare for performance, right? There is like a lot of coaching, bringing out your own personality and making a piece your own. I think that would be more in the coaching arena, right? Because, there is an interpretive part of, playing music. There is like a personality part. And I think a lot of teachers would love to get their students to that point where they can just deal with that, right?
Yeah. I think like interpretation, motivation, personalized, highly personalized in the trenches with the athlete, I think is more coach, And I think that's why the term sensei gets confused a lot, because sensei is like the all-encompassing everything. It is also teacher, right? And then, there is a word in Japanese for coach, right? Like kantoku, but it's like, sensei kind of just, you know what I mean?
Catch all.
Yeah. So it's like, especially in the American culture, viewing Eastern culture, and then, in Japan they do this and that. It's like, but you've never been to Japan or trained there, But it's like, it's
very common.
This thing that, But that's very
it's
important.
Like you put that on that word, not us.
Yes.
Right?
But yes, this, how would you, like, if you were to definitely describe instructor versus coach, like, how would you phrase that?
I maybe the focus on the for the instructor is more on the technique, right?
And the skill
like
side,
on
okay.
whereas the coach is the focus is on the athlete. I don't know exactly, where the line is, and it's different for different people, right? But that's sort of my general look at it.
You ready for this one? It's like, how when Facebook came out, it's like, how do you know these guys will stick around and stay on the platform? So in a certain time frame, if they don't get the 7 friends, they don't stay on the platform. But in a certain time frame, if they get the 7 friends, they're much more likely to stay on the platform forever, right? So it's like, what is a KPI, key performance indicator in your world of science and math, not like my world of grappling, right? So the KPI metric, I think, might be, you ready for this one? This is a Shintaro original, okay?
All right.
I'm your instructor if you can't call me on the weekends. I'm your coach if you could hit me up on Saturday and say, hey, man, I'm going to this tournament or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's a good indicator. That's a very good indicator.
It's a good one, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, man, all right, for instance, like, Marcus is my coach, let's just say.
Yeah.
I can hit him up on a Saturday, be like, hey, man, what do you think about this technique? What do you think about this video? Is this the real thing that I'm seeing? This spin behind back end, crab ride, berimbolo, 50-50, whatever guard. It's like, is that a real thing? And he'd be like, no, this is really stupid. Okay, thanks, coach. Right? So when does
you
it
just saved me a lot of time.
There you go. When does it cross that line? Because it's never clear, right? It's never like, all right, I'm going to be your athlete from now on. Let's sign this paperwork. It's never like that. All of a sudden you get pulled in. And, there's like indicators even in the room. Like, for instance, if you're in the Blue Basement with John Donaher, there was a section carved out where you would sit down. And I was in that room with Glick and all those guys, right? So it would be 60, 70, 80 guys in the room during noon. It's so crowded, you couldn't even stand or roll around. But the section where Donaher sat, Gordon could be there, Tonin could be there, Glick could be there.
I remember that.
I welcomed them in there because I was friends with Glick. Like that's that indicator. Now you're being coached by this one guy. Everyone else is just a student in the room,
Yeah.
Right? But how do you get there is the next question for you.
Yeah, because it's hard to navigate as a student. Because sometimes you want someone to be your coach and you're asking them questions, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you get like answers that really frustrate you.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Yeah, you get the answers like, just keep rolling.
Yeah, just keep rolling. Just keep training.
Or, hey, you're not doing anything wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. Your timing's just a little off, And
that's
it's
the hint that they don't want to take you as their
they don't
athlete
want to, they don't want to engage. Right. And whether they want to be your coach or not be a coach, like maybe, maybe they just weren't paying attention at the time, like, or something like that. I don't know. And then there are people who try to coach you and you're just like, I don't want you to coach me. You're just,
I'm okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm good. And so it is it's like dating. I remember my wife gave me a hard time once because we were talking to one of our friends.
Yeah.
And I just bluntly told this girl, like, I just don't think he's that into you, you know? And you just
Yeah.
got to like accept reality. And there is like a chemistry component, you know,
Yeah.
between a
Look
coach
you're
and
so
and an
warm.
athlete.
Yeah. It's,
Well, she was like shocked. She was like, I cannot believe you just said that.
yeah. Did she take
But it's like, hey,
offense
you
to
got,
that? Or?
no, I think she just was like, oh, you know,
Oh,
you're so
yeah.
blunt.
No, that's pretty
But,
well put.
you know, it's better to just deal with it. You know, I mean, you just got to deal with reality and just rip
Yeah.
that Band-Aid off or whatever
Yeah.
it is right away. And I think, you know, but I hear it all the time. Like you overhear someone, hey, like, what do I need to do to sort of get to the next level? And
Yep. Yep.
they're just like getting nothing, you know, getting nothing
No.
back.
Yeah, it's such a weird, and there's like a very nonverbal communication happening too, and people miss those subtle signs. What am I doing wrong? It's not, and I've made episodes about this, like be very descriptive and, verbally
Yeah,
communicate
right.
what you
Dealing with
need.
your,
Right side versus left side. I can't get inside position when I'm on the outside. What do I do
yeah,
technically? I've already tried these things. This is my thing. Like,
yeah,
it's like prompt engineering, in your LLM world because you're so into
yeah,
that, right? But when you're just saying to the coach, hey, what am I doing wrong? Maybe that person just asking, like, hey, can you take an extra eye and watch me while I'm training so you could give me a little bit extra feedback and maybe we could develop this coaching student athlete sort of a thing,
mhm,
and then
yeah,
when the teacher or the instructor is like, just keep coming, keep training, standoffish, you know,
yeah.
you got to
Because it's
seek
not wrong.
mentorship elsewhere. It's
Yeah,
not wrong.
it's not wrong though, right? I
No,
mean, it's
no.
almost like we were talking about in terms of like the gold standard, getting like a fusion in your neck.
Yeah.
It's sort of like, I mean, keep sparring, keep rolling. I mean, that's not really like bad advice,
No,
but it's just sort
no.
of very
Yeah.
generic.
Yeah.
But my theory though there is partially,
Yeah.
not completely, but partially, I think people are feeling unconsciously that divide between instruction and coaching.
Yeah.
They are getting to the point where they need a coach,
Yes.
but
That's
they
very true.
just can't find one. And they don't know that that's what they're looking for. And maybe the instructors in the class, I mean, most of them are very nice guys and they'll help you, right?
Yeah.
And I think also when you go to privates, right?
Yeah.
Some instructors continue to instruct you in the private,
Yeah,
which
for
for
sure.
some people is perfect. That's exactly what they're looking for.
Yeah.
But some people are looking for coaching
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
private lesson.
Yes.
And they're
Yes.
like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to learn any more techniques. I want to know why my stuff does not work, like in live rolling. But then if you roll with the instructor, it's not the same because he's so much better than you. He's like the reactions are all off. Like when
Yeah.
I roll with Dom Joni or I do stand up with you, like you're just all waiting
I
for
love how you
me.
didn't mention my
Like,
Newaza skill, by the way. Thank you for that, David. I caught that subtle
well,
jab
yes.
at
I
my
mean,
ground
I'm trying to
abilities.
respect the dual roles of this podcast between
Yeah.
judo and
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu, but yeah, I mean, like it's still wrong. Like
Yeah.
if there's the skill gap is too high, he's trying to give you looks. Like I'm sure you try to give student looks,
Yeah. All the time.
and
Yeah.
but it's still not the same because you're just sort of waiting for them to do the thing that you hope they will do and then taking the fall or just letting them do the technique. And that doesn't feel right either as
Yeah.
the Tory, right?
So what does a good
It's a struggle.
coach look like then to you?
I think I think it is a hard job. I mean,
It's a tough
I
job,
think
yeah.
that's why it's hard to find a coach because because it's one-on-one, it doesn't scale, right? Like you can't just coach 50 people.
No,
Right.
you can't do that. Yeah, and you know
And
what? It causes
it
a
does.
lot of issues in the class too. And
Yeah.
every gym has the teacher's favorite crop of athletes who they want to coach because it's kind of their way to live through them as well, right? They've become very good at this thing. Majority of the time, not
Yeah.
always. A lot of instructors haven't done a lot of competition, but a lot of them have. And now it's like, oh, I want to create someone just like me, and then I coach these guys to success, and I want to transfer the knowledge and all that stuff. And now all of a sudden, you look in the gym and you have multiple sort of factions of like, all right, this guy's a first class citizen. He's one of my athletes. He's being coached by me. And then you got all the regular hobbyists who just kind of get ignored and they're just being taught at, right? Here's the technique of the day, go do it. What am I doing
Right.
wrong? And you just keep training, you know? And
Yeah.
then you got the beginners that no one takes care of. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's actually like three levels of that stuff.
Yeah. I
And
mean, there is
you
a
know,
I think there is a natural progression, right? Because
yes, for sure.
getting tailored coaching when you're brand new sort of doesn't make any sense to me. I
No,
mean,
it doesn't.
it can help you, but
Yeah.
that's where I think the instruction helps because you're just trying to get your head around like, using your hips or
Yeah. Yeah.
I can use hooks or like what is a hook? What is
Yeah.
a post? Like what is all this stuff?
Very
So
true.
I do think that's but I do think it's not forgiving to be a coach because you need a lot of input,
Yep.
right? And there's not like, you need to know so much about that person. Like you can't just start coaching a guy
Not.
the first time you meet him, right? Like you need to understand what his tendencies are. You need to see him rolling. You need to be paying attention when he rolls. Like it's
Yeah.
a very demanding role because you got to know all this stuff about the person before you can be effective as a coach, unless there's just obvious crap, right? That
Yeah.
the guy's doing wrong. And maybe that's true, but once you get past a certain point, it may be obvious to the instructor or the coach. But there's this gap. Like there's this guy who was popular a while ago called his name was David Maister, and he was all about he consulted with professional service firms, right? And one of his big things was this gap between knowing and doing. Like you want to quit smoking, it's bad for you, you just don't do it, right? But it's obvious, right? It's obvious to you that you should stop smoking, you just can't do it. And that's why I think once you get to sort of that blue belt blues or even purple belt and you realize all my roles are the same, like kind of not just me but other people, like I sort of do the same things. I try to do things on the margin that are different or try to throw in some more technical things, but it's not about the technique anymore, right? It's about the anticipation, it's about the timing, it's about your mindset, right? Which are things that I think a good coach could help you with, right? But that guy, there's so much demands on that guy to understand that and then to find a way to either break bad habits or like to get you to bridge that gap between knowing something and doing something. Because most people, purple belt, brown belt, they know they know a lot of technique.
And a lot of it's just like finding the right motivators and all this stuff and then understanding how their mind works and trying to figure that out. Reward system sometimes like they're not so motivated, and that's the coach's job, I think, more so than the instructor. But I told you about when I did ballet for a couple of years. You're in a ballet class, right? And then there's this huge room with the mirrors, and you get sort of front row in the mirror if you're one of the people that the ballet teacher has sort of are mentoring,
Right.
And then it's like to get there, you kind of have to be like, there has to be a little bit of like the tap on the shoulder. And I think the initial indicator is something like everyone gets one or two feedback, Oh, your chin has to be up or relax your shoulders or whatever. He's going around just kind of like same feedback for everybody. Better turnout, relax your shoulders down, ribs down, chin up, whatever, right? And then he comes around and gives you 2 or 3 feedback in a training session. But then all of a sudden, 1 or 2 of those things is not everything that he's giving to everybody else, but it's a little bit more.
Right.
And now all of a sudden you're in their radar, and then you develop this thing. And then one day that teacher goes, hey, why don't you stand up here? And then this woman is brand new. She's going to follow you. And now all of a sudden you've been pulled into that thing. And each one of those instructors probably have about 5 to 10 athletes or dancers in their orbit. And then now all of a sudden it is expected for those people to follow them around the class. Hey, I'm teaching at BDC on Thursday. Can you make it at 11? Hey, on Tuesdays, where were you on Tuesday morning? Beginner class, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, I was pulled into that world. And this guy, Danny, he was like, he coached Amar, who was like the first Indian principal ballet dancer of the New York City Ballet.
Ooh.
Famous guy, yeah. And then he's like took a liking to me, and then little by little he started pulling me in. And all the dudes, because he was a guy, right, that he would coach were called Danny's boys. And they were really good.
Danny boy.
And then Wei would walk in, and the women in the class were like, oh my God, he's Danny's boy. It's Danny's boy, right? And then I was Brandon Danny's boy, but I was the worst one, obviously, out of all of them because I'm not a ballet dancer. I don't look like him at all,
Right.
you know? But it was a really cool thing. And now all of a sudden, this guy is giving me different feedback, right? Not
Right.
technical feedback because he knows I can't lift my leg. He knows I'm not as
Yeah.
mobile as these guys. All the technical stuff I can't do yet. But a lot of it is like, hey, man, dance like no one's watching. You don't give a shit. If you fall, that's okay. Like, there's some sort of motivating thing to just get me back into the room.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there
he
was
must have
much
seen something.
more. Oh yeah, no, I'm
He
a
must
great
have seen
athlete.
something. Like you must have been in there, like, in good faith. Like, hey, I'm
Oh
trying.
yeah,
Like, yes,
yeah,
I can't do what these guys do, but I'm
yeah.
trying to do what I can. Right.
But I thought it was very interesting, right? Because all these guys who were in that circle were 20 years old. They're trying to make it on a ballet team. I don't. What is it
Mm,
called? They're trying to be in the core.
troop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's core. I think it's like Corps de Ballet or
Oh,
something like
okay.
that. They're trying to go,
Yeah.
New York City Ballet, but they can't, so they go to some, ballet of Cincinnati or ballet or whatever it is, right? So they're
Right.
trying to get there, but clearly I'm not trying to do that. But still, he was able to help me on the weekends and this and that, and then coach me in a way. So I think that's a really good distinction. And it's responsibility of the athlete to seek that out. I think, right?
Yeah. Now that does bring us to a good point because at some point, I think you always have to take some ownership of your own development, right? But I think
Yes.
as you get deeper into it,
Yep.
sometimes people get frustrated because like how, I'm looking for a coach, I'm looking for someone to sort of help me. But I think if you're really frustrated with that, that might be a signal that you need to take more ownership over your own development, right?
And this is the number one thing
So,
you have to signal. It's like virtue signaling, but like in athletic world. You have to signal to the coach that you're coachable, that I'm ready,
yeah.
right? Because you don't want to coach someone that's not coachable, right? You got to be coachable. So you really got to take a introspective look, I think, at yourself, when you're kind of in that situation.
I am interested in this line between judo and jiu-jitsu because on the one hand, I think obviously, I think it's clear the jiu-jitsu game is much longer, right? Like there's no ippon,
Yeah.
so there's that old saying like you effed up a long time ago. The time horizon is I do think is definitely different, and so I've always wondered, sort of how the failure in jiu-jitsu is different from failure in judo,
Yeah.
and how that affects the kind of feedback you get,
Yeah.
right?
I think I'll give you one about the failure. The stakes are much higher in judo. And I say this
Yeah.
all the time. You make a mistake in jiu-jitsu, the guy passes your guard, not a big deal. You make
Yes.
a mistake in judo, you tear your ACL,
Yeah.
and you land on your shoulder
Yeah.
and you get your shoulder dislocated. And because it happens so fast, a lot of the times these coaches and instructors have no clue what happened, especially if they weren't watching with that intent the whole time. So
Hmm.
it's like bang, someone got thrown. Why did I get thrown? Why did I get taken down there? It could have been a myriad of things. Maybe you were in losing position, so you were more likely to get taken down.
Yeah.
But we were 50-50. Okay, maybe he's just stronger than you. Maybe he's faster than you. He set you up with a Sasai 2 minutes ago, so maybe you thought Sasai was coming, and then you leaned in that direction and he blasted you through, right? No, but I was winning in position. Maybe the guy's just physically stronger than you. Maybe you were trying to
Yeah.
defend with your arms, and then when you should have been defending with your whole body. Yeah, but then Sasai would have came. Yeah, but maybe he didn't see that. Maybe he didn't know that. Maybe you tripped on your pant leg because your pants are too long. There's a
Yeah.
million different things, and it happens so fast. It's very difficult to say why that you got taken down. And majority of the coaches, I'm gonna say like 90% of coaches, don't have the eye to be able to see
Yeah.
that
No
because it
idea.
happens so fast. Unless you've
Yeah.
studied high level judo, watched film, can't slow it down, understand the whole context of the thing, had a great coach who was able to do that for you, it's really
Yeah.
impossible to kind of see.
Yeah.
Even me, it's like sometimes bang, someone gets thrown. It's like, yo, Sensei, did you see me get taken down? I did. You got slammed. We all saw it, right? But it's like, why? It's like I don't know, man. Like it was so fast. Like I caught the
Yeah.
end of it. Like what happened the minute
Yeah.
before?
Yeah.
Like did you know it was coming? Like it's impossible for me to
Yeah.
say definitively why did I get caught. It's like why do I suck at judo? I don't know, man. You gotta, you know what I mean? And then you could almost, the guiding thing is like, no, don't step like this, step like that, or don't grab here, grab like that. I think that's the
Yeah.
worst advice on the planet. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
The answer to that as a good coach is like, listen, if you're in this position, you're less likely to get taken down by that. If you're reverse that position, if you lose a position, you're more likely. So we have to
Yeah.
spend a lot of time trying to be in better
Yes.
position.
Yes.
How does that look
Yes.
like? What are your gripping sequences? Right? Do you know how to fight for position? You know? Also, let's take into account that guy was 30 pounds heavier. So even if you're winning in position, did you see it coming?
You could be
Right?
losing.
Do you know do you know the defense and all this stuff, right? So it's like it's a lot more involved, and you could only sort of like guide them just a little bit. Maybe next time you'll be familiar. Hey, you got caught with a drop soda. Why did you get caught? Because no one in the gym does drop soda,
Yes.
right?
And you just never felt it.
Yeah, and drop attacks are banned, green and below. You just got promoted to green. Of course you're going to get thrown drop
Yeah.
soda 19 times in a row. And then you have coaches like,
Right.
you just weren't exposed
Right.
to the stimulus enough. And, that's
Right.
kind of, right?
Right.
Don't push
And a
as
good
much.
coach
It
will
should
have
be-
a training program for you,
Yes,
to follow
exactly,
up, right?
Exactly.
They will
And then,
know how to, like,
I
you know
hear
what?
all the time. Don't step like this. Step like that. This is how you defend it. It's like, no, that's not really definitively what it is. But that's a great instructor answer.
Yeah.
Just step around.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Just
gotta block it.
yeah. Whenever you hear the word "just," it's a red flag. I feel.
Yeah. Don't
Like,
grab
just
here.
do this.
Grab that. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
thanks. That's the most helpful thing I've ever heard in all of grappling. Thank you. Do more
Yeah.
Uchikomis.
I'm
Sure.
the idiot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah,
I
no.
should have just grabbed here.
Yeah.
So if you're listening, we'd love to hear. What's the most annoying advice you get? That way we can surface them all, flush them all out, and that way everyone will know, like, this is a BS answer. I gotta figure something better out. And if you're, if you're an instructor or a coach, it's not. I don't think it's that people have bad intentions. I just think it's being aware, right? And so, and how, like, if you've been in the game for a long time and you give some of these answers, I think it's just because you don't remember being on the other side of these questions, and being like,
athlete has to take responsibility too, man. You got to show and signal that you're coachable, and you got to be within you got to be close. You got to be close to the guy who you want to be coached. And I think one of the main prerequisites is showing up time and time again. And if and only if you're in the proximity for an extended period of time, do you even qualify to ask the thing? If you're coming once a week and then you're like, hey, what am I doing wrong? Can you coach me? The answer 99% of the time is no. Get away from me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you haven't put the time in. You don't deserve my extra time. I will instruct you. I will teach you. You could listen to me teach about this stuff and understand and then ask technical questions, but you can't call me on the weekends. I love this one though. People think they could buy that by purchasing a private lesson. And now all of a sudden they're like, I'm
yes, this is interesting.
that you watch and understand and this and that. You can't buy it. You still have to be coachable. You still have to be there. Okay, great. You pay me, 2 sessions a month. It's $600. It's like $300 an hour, right, for the privates that I do. And it's like, but that doesn't qualify you as an athlete to be coached by me. And there needs to be this mutual respect, because sometimes they'll do that and then they'll treat me like the help. And that's an immediate, like, what, you're fired you're fired as a student,
Yeah,
no, that's why I say no to most privates too, because there is that expectation of like, this guy is my coach, and he's paying for that, But that thing can rub a lot of these coaches the wrong way. Most of these coaches, though, they do it for a living, and then they need the income for it also. I'm not saying I don't need the income, I'm broke sometimes too, like everybody else in this world, right?
Right. But aside from that, unless they see you like training, kind of training competitively, you don't have to be a competitor, but like having sort of higher intensity sparring where you're really trying to do the right things, which is why people say if you compete, you learn a lot more. It's just hard. Like if you're having lackadaisical roles in class and there's actually like your instructor is actually interested in coaching you and watching you, it's hard for him, I think, to give you good feedback, because it's sort of like garbage in, garbage out. If you're sort of lackadaisically pulling guard, if you're not really sharp mentally and trying to do the right things, they're not going to give you good advice.
No, you got to be likable also,
Oh, that now the standard is too high, Shintaro. This is too high. Yeah. So many unlikable people out there. Well, listen, Any last words of wisdom on this subject? I think we've talked a little bit about instructors versus coaching. You've talked about coaching in the past, I know, but this is something that came up with Marcus, and it's something that comes up over and over again with people unconsciously and explicitly. And I think it does cause a lot of confusion sometimes with
There's
people.
another level above coaching too. There's mentorship. And that costs $9.99.99. That's it. Yeah, but I gotta just advocate for the athletes out there too. Not advocate, give advice, and it's like, hey man, be likable, be coachable, do your very best, show up, and then you want to sort of get to that place where your instructor becomes your coach, and find a good coach, and then make yourself coachable. So then they take you on, and once you do, if they are a good person, and now we're talking into the realm of like, all right, this guy not only is skilled, he's a good human being. Maybe this person could be my mentor. And that really is the path to like martial arts success, because there are smart people who are coaches, who are instructors out there. And it's sort of this two-way street. There's like top-down management and bottom-up management. You got to manage up, when you're talking about business stuff. And I think it really applies here. And, hope this is helpful for you guys. And Dave, thank you very much for always being
You're welcome, Shintaro. I'm happy to be your mentor. Take it easy, guys.